Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the November 23rd special planning meeting of Council. As we do at the start of each meeting, we have a short moment of private contemplation, so please join me. Thank you, everyone. So I will call this meeting to order. Councillor Sandhu is out of the country, so he will sends his regrets. That adoption of agenda, recommendation that the special council agenda dated November the 23rd, 2021 be adopted as printed. A mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Dykey, Councillor Orr, all in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. At this time, Council, you may declare any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none, I'll convene the public meeting. So the recommendation is that the statutory public meeting be called to order at 7:02 p.m. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Lamb, Councillor Ferragini, all in favor? And it is carried. So I'll read the introduction. So this meeting is a statutory public meeting held pursuant to section 17, 22, 34, and 51 of the Planning Act to discuss amendments to zoning bylaw 2010-050. The town has received applications that have been deemed complete under the Planning Act and is therefore required to hold this public meeting as part of the application review process. Comments presented at this public meeting are being recorded by staff. Personal information is being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions regarding the collection and use of personal information should be directed to the clerk. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to council before a decision is made on the proposal, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So 4.3 is the public information meeting, applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. Owner is Corporation of the County of Simcoe. The agent is Skelton, Bromwell and Associates. The address is 2960 line 12 and concession 12, south part of lot 11, part 1 on plan 51R-39916. Files number OPA D09-21-01. Zoning bylaw to D14-21-04. So planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the applicant's application being presented by staff represents the applicant's development proposal. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. So I will ask now our planning staff to take over the meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council and members of the public. Thank you for attending this evening's public meeting for the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 2960 line 12 for the purposes of facilitating the expansion of waste transfer site 16. I would like to start by providing an overview of tonight's presentation. I will first discuss the purpose of the public meeting, outline the public notice process, introduce the applicant's proposal, provide a detailed overview of the application, and share some concluding remarks and next steps. To provide comments or receive notification as to when this file will be examined by council again, please send an email to mmasudi@townofbwg.com. Please make sure you include your full name and municipal address in your email. The purpose of tonight's public meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council and the public and to invite questions and seek input. Once an application is deemed complete, the town is obligated under the Planning Act to hold a public meeting. Currently, staff are in the process of completing a detailed review of the proposal, and council will not make any decisions on this application tonight. The matter will be referred back to staff to consider the results of the public meeting and to review comments received through the circulation process. Staff will report to council with a recommendation at a later date once a comprehensive review has taken place. Regarding public notice procedure, signage was confirmed and installed on the property by the applicant on September 24th. And as prescribed by the Planning Act, notice of public meeting was mailed to all property owners assessed within 120 meters of the property. Notice was also placed in the September 23rd edition of the Bradford topic. I will now provide an overview of the subject lands and area. The subject lands are located at 2960 Line 12 in proximity to the intersection of Line 12 and Side Road 10. The lands have a cumulative area of approximately 38.5 hectares, an approximate frontage of 400 meters on Line 12, and an approximate depth of 678 meters. The properties have portions of land located in both the Lake Simcoe and Nottawasaga Valley watersheds. However, as the portions thereof, which have an area regulated by a conservation authority, are only located within the Nottawasaga Valley watershed, the NVCA will be reviewing these applications on behalf of both authorities, and the LSRCA will not be providing comments. The surrounding areas for the subject lands include mainly rural residences and agricultural lands and forested areas. Next slide, please. Currently, the site contains a former landfill in the southern portion of the site, which was closed in 2007 and is now monitored. The site also includes an active waste transfer station located adjacent to the 12th Line Road. The transfer station is operated to handle municipal solid waste as well as for diversion of household hazardous waste and non-hazardous materials through a public drop-off facility. Waste and divertible materials are stored temporarily at the site for subsequent transfer to licensed waste processing facilities. Materials at the site also include brush and wood that is occasionally processed at the site using a grinder. The County of Simcoe has recently acquired an additional 1.4 hectares of land located to the west of the current site with the objective of redevelopment of the transfer station portion of the site to relocate components and increase the footprint of the area dedicated to the transfer station operations. The intention of the expansion is to provide better accessibility to the site, increase the footprint to establish various collection depots, and to provide enhanced efficiency in the circulation of internal traffic and operation. The image to the right demonstrates the location of the existing facility in yellow, and the green demonstrates the proposed location of the transfer facility, as well as the expansion lands. This slide contains an image of the proposed plans for the eastern portion of the property. The plan redesign will consist of moving the entrance to the east end of the site, as is shown here. This slide contains an image of the proposed plan for the western portion of the property. As shown in this slide of the western portion of the property, the scales have been moved further to the west, and expansion of the waste transfer and management facilities have been incorporated on the site. An upgraded household hazardous waste facility and staff office are also proposed to be located within the upgraded facility. All wood and brush grinding operations will be conducted on the west side of the transfer station as well. This slide contains an image of the entirety of the proposed plan for the property. In support of the application, the applicant has submitted numerous technical studies for staff review. These include planning, engineering, and investigative environmental studies included on this slide. The slide contains the official plan land use mapping for the area as adopted by council. The subject property is designated as agricultural and active and approved county waste disposal site. The OPA, the official plan amendment, applies to the portion currently designated as agricultural, and in the town's 2002 official plan, the permitted uses within this designation are agricultural related uses, forestry, farming, and other agriculturally related uses. The official plan amendment submitted by the applicant requests the redesignation of the 1.4 hectares of expansion lands from agricultural to active and approved county waste disposal site to facilitate the expansion of the waste transfer site. This slide contains the draft official plan amendment schedule demonstrating the location of the OPA. Section 7.24 of the official plan contains policies regarding expansions to existing non-farm uses within the agricultural designation, stating existing uses, including, among others, industrial and institutional uses, may be recognized in the town zoning bylaw and may be permitted reasonable expansion by taking into consideration the following. The proposed expansion will not affect the viability of surrounding agricultural operations. The site is serviced with an adequate water supply and sewage disposal facilities. The access is from a public road that can accommodate the traffic generated by the use in compliance with approved minimum distance separation formula, and the proposed expansion can be buffered from adjacent uses where necessary. Section 9.6 of the official plan also contains policies regarding solid waste management, stating the following. There is one open waste disposal site in Lot 12, Concession 12, and several closed waste disposal sites in the town as shown on the schedule to this plan. The development of new uses or new or enlarged buildings or structures within an assessment area of approximately 500 meters from the property boundary of the open site or 500 meters from the fill area of the closed site may be permitted, provided an assessment is completed to determine the impact of any methane gas migration, whether the proposed use will be adversely affected by noise, odor, dust, or other nuisance factors from the waste disposal site, potential traffic impacts, whether the proposed use will be adversely affected by ground and surface water contamination by leachate migrating from the waste disposal site, and the impact of the proposed use on leachate migration from the landfill site. In accordance with these policies, the attached image demonstrates a comparison of the existing 500-meter assessment area from the property boundary of 2960 line 12 in red, and the 500-meter assessment area from the landfill footprint of the site in orange, with the expansion site shown in red. The applicant has also submitted technical studies that were mentioned previously to demonstrate the impacts and suitability of the proposed development. In zoning bylaw 2010-050 as amended, the lands containing the existing management site are zoned as waste management hold 2, and the expansion lands are zoned as agricultural and environmental protection zones. Permitted uses include agricultural uses, composting facility, waste management area, waste transfer facility, among other uses. This slide contains the zoning bylaw amendment request and zoning schedule submitted by the applicant. The application seeks to rezone the lands from the waste management holding and agricultural holding zones to the waste management exception 1 zone, with the effect of treating the continuous lands zoned waste management exception 1 as a single lot. The slide contains the wording of the exception being requested, stating that for the purposes of interpretation of the provisions of this bylaw, the lands zoned WM-1 shall be considered to be a single lot. I will now go through comments that have been received to date. The subject application was circulated for review on November 3rd. The following agencies and departments have no objection or concern: the Bradford Clerk's Department and South Lake Regional Health Center. While there were no public concerns or comments raised at the time of the writing of this report, since then there has been requests for information regarding what is being proposed, and also we have received comments from Mr. Len Ferragini raising concern with the following. With regards to noise pollution, Mr. Ferragini has expressed concern regarding increased levels of noise in recent years due to increased activity and population growth. Mr. Ferragini has also expressed concern regarding the addition of equipment in closer proximity to line 12, removal of trees, and concern regarding adequate buffering being provided along the southern border of the property, and also has raised concern with regards to the applicant's acoustic study presenting data from Collingwood. Mr. Ferragini has also expressed concern regarding visibility. He has concern with regards to the removal of trees on line 12, resulting in the removal of natural and noise buffering. He requests clarification regarding reasons for placement of processing and equipment close to the road, suggests use of space further north and west of the site to reduce noise and improve appearance, and also requests increase in width and height of buffer area with more fencing and trees to address noise and debris concerns. Mr. Ferragini also raised concerns regarding traffic. He has expressed concern regarding traffic queuing in front of the site and the impact that this will have on the homes nearby. He's concerned regarding increased pressure on 12th line to accommodate the increased levels of traffic and the impacts that this will have on visibility, safety, and damages to road shoulders. He also requests clarification regarding the following. How he has asked for clarification regarding how many more vehicles the redesign will accommodate versus the current existing layout. He has also requested clarification regarding how the internal traffic efficiency will be improved, the viability of using the eastern boundary road of the site for access and providing a loop around the south to alleviate safety and congestion concerns, the use of more internal area within the lands to allow more effective expansion in the future. He has also requested clarification regarding how the increase in internal capacity impact traffic management on 12th line and what will the future traffic flow external to the site resemble. He has also requested to the applicant to specify the new gate location and permission for vehicles to queue internally. Among the last points expressed by Mr. Ferragini, he has stated that the distance from the north edge of the proposed screening berm to the southern edge of the property appears to be less than 13.5 meters. He asks if the berm can be widened or the operational equipment can be moved closer to the middle of the site. He has also requested clarification on how the following issues raised by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks at the pre-consultation stage will be addressed. These include the overall concept for the transfer site reconfiguration, municipal setbacks for the ring road around the site to be examined on the site plan, and an acoustic assessment of the area to be developed and completed to confirm that there will be no noise impacts from vehicles, and a contingency plan is considered in the evaluation. I will now provide some final remarks. The purpose of this public meeting, as required by the Planning Act, is to introduce the applicant's proposal. Staff have not yet completed a detailed review of the application, and council will not be making any decisions on this matter tonight. Following the meeting, the application will be referred back to staff for further review. At a later date, once a comprehensive review has taken place, staff will report back to council with a recommendation. Until that point, public comments can be submitted. To close, for members of the public who wish to comment or receive future notification when this application will be considered by council, please send an email to msudi@townofbwg.com. Michael Winia, Skelton Brumwell, and Laura Barrett and Rob McCauley from the county are in attendance this evening to answer any questions that council may have on the application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Manna. So I'll now ask the applicant or the representative if they want to make any presentation or have any comment at this time.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, my name is Michael Winia. I'm a consultant, senior planner and ecologist with Skelton Brumwell Associates, assisting the county in this matter. And as indicated by staff, county staff are here as well to answer any questions. We do have a brief presentation, which I hope will respond to some of the questions this evening. And I'll go through that quickly because staff did an excellent job of highlighting the main points, but I do want to just raise a few matters and hopefully address some of the questions that came up from the public. And again, we are here, myself and staff, to also further to respond to those questions. Could I have the next slide, please? So as indicated, the County of Simcoe currently owns and operates the Bradford West Gwillimbury Transfer Station, Site 16, located at 2960 Line 12, Bradford West Gwillimbury. Next slide, please. The existing 37.1 hectare property is currently utilized as a transfer station, so this is not a new use, it's an expansion of the use. And it also contains the former licensed fill area of which is approximately 9.7 hectares in size, which had previously been used for disposal of municipal, domestic, commercial, vegetable and solid agricultural waste. Landfill operations ceased in 2007. The waste transfer station plays an important role in county waste management system. The transfer station is located where residents can conveniently drop off waste materials in various collection stations for subsequent transport to appropriate final disposal and recycling facilities. No long-term storage of waste occurs at a transfer station. So this, again, is a transfer station that's currently in operation, but the proposal is to enhance those operations and make them more efficient. Next slide, please. I'm going to give you a little bit of the history of what's happened. In 2012, the County Council approved staff to pursue an expansion of Site 16 through potential purchase of a neighboring property. In 2015, 1.4 hectares of land to the west of the site was approved for potential purchase. And then from 2015 to 2018, a large variety of studies took place, as summarized by staff, to ensure that the property could be developed for the purposes of the transfer station. In 2018, the county purchased the property and closed the property relative to that purchase from the neighboring landowner for the redevelopment of the site. And since 2018, all of those initial reports were further updated and finalized, and then the applications were submitted for the approvals process to the town. And this public meeting, of course, is a key step in the municipal planning approvals process. Next slide, please. The need for improvements is based on increased usage of the site. So there's two real objectives here. One is to improve the efficiency of the site and make it operate more smoothly and resolve some of the issues with the site. And another one is the anticipation of increased usage. The site largely services the town of Bradford West Gwillimbury and the town of Innisfil, with the next closest site being the Tosseranio landfill site, Site 13, located in Agila, Tosseranio. In 2020, the site processed 69,600 transactions compared to 2016, where it was 58,030 transactions that were processed. There's an expectation, of course, that growth will continue to increase to this site and will continue to be an increase in the number of transactions and users on the facility. So again, trying to make it more efficient, but at the same time accommodate those increases in use that are anticipated. Next slide, please. So the county has acquired the additional 1.4 hectares located west of the current waste management site, down in the southwest corner there. And the intent is to increase the footprint of the transfer station to allow for the increased efficiency of the operations, to allow for more internal queuing and so on, which I'll explain in more detail as we go through the presentation. Basically, it's going to operate more efficiently, more effectively in terms of circulation, the nature of the drop-off areas, improved site safety, and so on. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Sorry. So this is the overall view that was indicated earlier. You can see in the top corner of the top right-hand corner of the slide, the existing site with aerial photography. You can see the entrance located more towards the west of the site along the road there. And then the operational areas. below that, in the larger graphic, you can see the improvements that are intended to be established in terms of moving that entrance over to the east portion of the site, providing a longer internal queuing area, 2 different processing areas, one for free materials and one for the other materials that require visitors to go over the scales and so on. And I'll go into a little more detail of those improvements in the next slide. Thank you. So we've got a new stormwater management facility that's located in the northwest corner of the property there. We have the redesign of internal flow, providing increased space for internal traffic movement and separating the users so that there's improved safety. It's going to be easy for visitors to site to negotiate through the drop-off locations once they've gone through the scales. We have a free drop-off area over on the east portion of the site, and that will shorten time on the site for those materials that can be dropped off without having to cross the scales and so on, further improving traffic flows, shortening visitation on the site, and that should also, again, ease traffic flows both on the road and internally in the site. We also have a household hazardous waste, electronics, and mattress recycling buildings located in that eastern portion of the site, and a staff office and lunchroom there as well. And again, the new entrance to reduce on-road queuing and shift to internal queuing. Next slide, please. So these are blow-up details. You can see this slide is on the east end of the site, showing the electronics and household hazardous waste areas and the mattress disposal and the office, and then the drop off for free materials, recycling materials in this area. You can see the entrance at the lower portion of the site, providing that queuing distance on the site. And then the next slide, please. Then this is the west end of the site, again showing the queuing coming into the scales at the bottom there, and then traffic circulating through the site for all the various drop-off locations of various materials. And that portion of the site is actually the site that is impacted by the expansion onto the lands that were acquired, and is the portion of the site that is the subject of these applications in terms of the official plan amendment and the zoning amendment. Next slide, please. So in terms of the various studies that were done, one of the studies was the environmental impact statement. An update to that statement dated 2020 was April 3rd, 2020 was prepared by Golder and Associates. It was also supplemented by a further review letter at that time, and it established the following key points. 3 species designated as endangered under the ESA, little brown myotis, northern myotis, and tricolored bat, were assessed to have moderate potential to occur in the upland forest area in the northern portion of the site. So these are all bat species that were found to have the potential to be in the northern portion of the site. However, minimal removal of habitat potential is not expected to impact the ability of these species at risk bats to use the site for maternity roosting, and mitigation measures are recommended to minimize adverse impact on the species and their habitat. The next slide, please. The environmental impact study also indicated that one species designated as special concern, eastern wood peewee, was also observed in the study area during the previous studies and was assessed to have a high potential to occur on the site. 3 additional species designated as special concern under the ESA, common nighthawk, wood thrush, and monarch, were assessed to have moderate potential to occur on the site or within the study area based upon the availability of habitat. Although no individual or habitat protection is afforded to species of concern, with implementation of appropriate best management practices that are laid out in the environmental impact study, adverse impacts to these species will be minimized. The Cookstown Hollow Swamp, provincially significant wetland, is located approximately 120 meters west of the site and is not to be expected to be directly impacted by the proposed facility. In addition, the implementation of appropriate best management practices will have no adverse indirect effects So the environmental impact study sets out a whole series of best management practices to make sure that there are no negative impacts from an environmental standpoint. Next slide, please. 2 unevaluated wetlands are also mapped on the northern portion of the site. And again, we're determined to be part of a single wetland feature rather than independent. And we're classified as mixed swamp. The mixed swamp is outside of the proposed facility, the stormwater management facility, and no direct impacts are anticipated. Again, the proposed stormwater management facility design will maintain existing drainage patterns that support that swamp, and the footprint will be set back a minimum of 30 meters from the wetland. So there are no adverse indirect effects expected, and no direct impacts either. The forest at this site is part of a significant woodland feature extending across the local landscape. Minimal tree removal will occur as part of the proposed project in the expansion area, and will generally be limited to the edge of that woodland feature. Because of that, no adverse impacts to the overall form or function of the significant woodland are expected. Next slide, please. The northern portion of the site, north of the ridge on the site, is considered significant valley land. Minor changes to the valley land form are proposed that are not expected to have a significant residual impact to the overall form or morphology of the valley land. Existing trees on the natural side slopes will be preserved, and existing drainage patterns on the site will be maintained. So no adverse impacts to the overall function of the valley land are expected. The supplemental reporting letter looked at options for redesign of the site, and it concluded that the design from a natural heritage perspective, that the proposed design would result in the fewest impacts to natural heritage features than possible alternatives of expanding to the north. So most of the environmental features are located to the west and north, and the site is being designed to have no impact based upon appropriate mitigation measures and being in that southerly location within the site. So the site is somewhat dictated in terms of location by having the least environmental impact possible. Next slide, please. A traffic study was prepared in 2016 by CMIA. The study examined existing conditions for access. This included reviewing traffic volume, speed, classification, as well as queue estimation for the proposed site reconfiguration. So they did an analysis of the queues currently and then the queues in the future. A number of options were developed and evaluated, and the study area focused on the length of line 12 from approximately 500 meters west of the original access to the new proposed access. Site line limitations were identified as an issue, along with stopping site distance limitations due to queued vehicles blocking the eastbound lane. So it's recognized that the existing configuration of the entrance is not the most desirable, and a number of reconfigurations were evaluated on the site as well. Next slide, please. After evaluation of 5 options to mitigate the impacts of queues on line 12, option 3, which consists of a central auxiliary left turn lane, was the preferred option. However, the study did note that the need for a road widening to accommodate a third lane may not be feasible due to geometric limitations in the road. The technical feasibility of this option has to be further evaluated following upgrades of the facility and the determination of its impacts on flow. So there's a theoretical queuing and a theoretical flow that's being assessed, but once the improvements are made, the actual flows can be measured to determine what additional improvements may be required. And option 3 is not feasible from a technical perspective. Option 2, which consists of signs, pavement markings, and queue detection, would be preferred over option 1. So option 2 includes signs, pavement markings, flashing beacons in terms of watch for slow or stop traffic signs, etc. And the flashing beacons would be activated by queue detectors located near the transfer facility to warn drivers when queues are actually present on line 12. So there's a variety of different methodologies used here. First of all, get a lot of the traffic onto the site relative to internal queuing, and then improvements on the road to deal with traffic issues. The proposed reconfiguration of the site's internal layout will have the access moved approximately 195 meters east of the existing access, and the way scales have also been moved approximately 135 meters west of the current position. So we're moving the access to the east, the way scales to the west. That combination gives you a significant amount of internal queuing. Next slide, please. A stormwater management study was also undertaken and was updated in May 2021. It was prepared by Golder and Associates. This report addressed both quantity and quality control for the stormwater management. Stormwater management for the facility was designed with the primary objective of preventing flood risk potential increases, as well as limiting erosion and sedimentation down gradient at the site. What the proposed stormwater management plan consists of is storm scepters, grass swales, ponds, and a pond forebay that are used for quality control purposes. The storm scepters have been designed to provide 80% total suspended solids removal and collect discharge from all of the paved surfaces of the site. A small portion of the eastern site will remain unpaved and will continue to drain to the east as it does under current conditions. Stormwater management improvements will all meet the NVCA requirements, which is the conservation authority that's charged with reviewing the file. Next slide, please. An archaeological study was also completed. Revised stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessments dated December 20th, 2016 were prepared by Golder and Associates. The stage 1 background study found that there was a potential for recovery of pre and post-contact Indigenous and historical Euro-Canadian archaeological resources within the project area. The areas of previous disturbances slope were exempt from the stage 2 test pit survey as per standard guidelines that were used, as they exhibit low potential for recovery of archaeological remains. A stage 2 assessment of the remaining area resulted in no archaeological resources being identified, and a finding that no further archaeological assessment is recommended for these areas. So there are no recommended archaeological conservation requirements for the transfer station expansion site because there basically are no resources there. Next slide, please. An acoustic study was also completed by Golder in 2016 and updated in 2019 in order to evaluate the acoustic impacts and establish noise level predictions. Relevant sound levels of sources were obtained from on-site measurements at similar county facility in Collingwood. Now they have to get that data from a different site, and that's why you see reference to Collingwood, because they needed a similar facility to take those measurements from to determine the potential impacts of this location. 5 locations were identified as being representative of the most sound sensitive existing or potential points of reception in the vicinity of the site. The results of the assessment indicated that sound levels from site operations at the surrounding properties or receptors are predicted to be at or below the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change sound level limits with the implementation of controls into the design of the site. So the standards that are established by the province for sound levels emanating from the site such as this are going to be met by the design of the site. As outlined in the report, it's expected that the site can operate in compliance with the noise guidelines and that the applicable guidelines ensure compatibility with adjacent land uses. Next slide, please. This is the proposed amendment, which was reviewed by your staff, so I won't go into greater detail, but it's basically adding the lands to the designation that currently exists for the current site. The next slide, please. And this, again, is the proposed zoning amendment, again, adding the subject lands to the waste management site and also treating it as one lot for the purposes of interpretation of the various provisions that are associated with the zoning of the lands. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the proposed expansion and the associated amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw are consistent with the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, conform to the County of Simcoe official plan, conform to the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury official plan, comply with the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury comprehensive zoning bylaw, and represent good land use planning. Next slide, please. Thank you for the opportunity to present this proposal. I realize that I've been speaking very quickly, but your staff did cover a lot of the ground, and I wanted to make sure that we left plenty of room for responding to any questions from the public and or council. And again, I will assist in that response, but county staff are very familiar with the technical details, and so will take the primary role in responding to questions, and then I will be there relative to any planning matters that arise. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Linnea. So at this time, I'll ask our clerk if we have any submissions from the public that have been forwarded for this meeting. Laura?
No, Your Worship, we haven't received any requests from the public to speak on this application.
Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to members of council for questions, comments. So, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I was really interested in the potential impacts on wildlife, and I think maybe because the balance of the old landfill site is not open to the public, there you're not going to have any humans in there and their pets and such like that. Is there a possibility? Let me go back. When we moved the canal and we changed some bridges and stuff, we had to build structures to accommodate the swallows. And then subsequent to that, after we provided some habitat for fish. Is there a possibility of looking at, for instance, you mentioned monarchs, of just simply planting some milkweed back there to help them out, and also for the bats, maybe some sort of structure or small structures to allow the bats to have a place to go and nest, and the same thing with some of the birds. I don't think it would be tremendously expensive, but you do have 70 acres back there that where something could be free from human interference and maybe making things better. Just a thought. I also have some acorns that fell off an oak tree that I would be glad to donate to the county, so that somebody can go back there with these acorns and push them in the ground 8 inches, just like the squirrel did it. Because of climate change, the Carolinian forest is starting to extend up here, and be nice to have some hardwood trees as well as pine trees or conifers, because they both provide different habitats. So I'm just hoping that it wouldn't cost very much, but I'm hoping the county would attempt to mitigate any potential ahead of time, especially for the bats and the swallows and the monarchs. Thank you.
Your Worship, I'll take a first crack at responding to that, and then staff, county staff may want to further comment on that. Certainly the primary objective of the environmental impact study was to reduce the potential for impact. So that's by minimizing the encroachment on those areas and by providing a whole range of best practices. That includes some potential habitat mitigation, but I will let the county respond to any additional mitigation opportunities that we could certainly assist them with there.
Mr. McCullough, would you like to comment?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. We're always open to looking at good ideas. As Mr. Whittingham mentioned, I think a lot of the mitigation strategies we're looking at with respect to the birds and the bats is the seasonality when we're going to be taking down the trees, so we're not interrupting an existing roosting. But we're only talking about 1.4 hectares here, and as part of a larger forest structure, there will certainly be a lot of additional areas for the roosting to continue. We'd certainly look at some of the suggestions that have been made. I'm not certain the oaks will take, or it's pretty swampy at the back of our site that we're talking about. Cedars grow great there, so we may have to look at that. I'm not sure it's the perfect opportunity for oaks, but we can always talk to our forestry section about that.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask any other members of council for comment or questions. So Councillor Dykey.
Well, as the presentation went forward, and I know Len Ferragini's presentation was done in written form, and I just hope after seeing his presentation, he has a lot of valid points there, and I hope the county, we can get a copy of how you guys respond to those concerns, because as a neighbor there, he has to deal with noise and traffic, and I hope the county can minimize their all the answers, deal with all the answers, and improve that area to the best of their ability. Those are my comments.
Go ahead, Mr. McCullough. Sorry.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship, we'd be happy to do a written response. We just received those comments today, so I'm not prepared to speak to them in any great length today. But I agree with you. I think many of the comments are valid, and I think we can easily address them, because I believe it's just an understanding of what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is improve the safety and usability of the site, and I think we're in agreement with the comments that came in, and I think we just have to explain how the site will do that better for Mr. Ferragini.
Okay, Councillor Orr, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just something that when I looked at the increase in the amount of trips to the dump, to the transfer site, sorry, in 2020, I can't help but think that a lot of that was COVID. So many people, I know so many people that had put off things for years of cleaning up and doing things that all of a sudden they had time to do it and cleaned up, and I just wondered if that was looked at as part of the increase of trips to the dump last year, because and that things might settle down. I was one of the ones definitely that lined up forever to get in due to COVID. So just a comment. When I saw those numbers, I thought that maybe should be brought out.
Director McCullough, I think you could comment on that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. We I don't think there's anyone in Simcoe County who doesn't have a perfectly clean garage by the end of COVID. Hopefully that's coming soon. We certainly do have seen increased use of the sites, not only last year. This year is far higher than we actually saw last year as well. It's an ongoing trend, though, in the county that we've been seeing increased usage of our site year over year for many years. I would agree with you. The usage that we saw last year and have seen increase this year surprised us. And so we do believe that some of it is due to the pandemic and people working from home and having more time on their hands at some points to get those little projects done. But we know with the growth that's coming in South Simcoe, that the increased population is going to drive more trips there as well. So we have to plan for that, and we want to make sure that we are able to do it safely, and that's why we're coming before you with the proposal you see now.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Councillor Ferragini and then Deputy Mayor Leduc.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I was going through the report, I had similar questions actually as Mr. Ferragini, who put forward his questions to the report. This area, this is in my area, and I find that I get a lot of phone calls based on the amount of traffic that is lined up on this road. And unfortunately, even with the signage that you guys do have, there's also people who try to turn into the dump, making a left-hand turn coming from west to east. And that always causes a major issue for anybody who wants to drive straight through. So listening to the presentation, I was kind of surprised that the traffic study was mentioned that it was done in 2016, because you all know we've been getting a lot more traffic. We've been getting a lot more people moving into the area. It's not just the pandemic. I agree that it definitely would affect more people doing things at home or things that they've wanted to do. But at the same time, our population is constantly going up, and we're going to see it rise even more. So I really want to make sure that this is done properly. When we're looking at flipping the exit from one side to the other and those scale from one side to the other, and I'm hearing that it allows for more internal flow. I'm curious to know how many more vehicles, because when you take a look at the way it is currently, you'll have like 30, 40 cars lined up on the street. So I can't see 30, 40 cars being lined up inside the station the way that the designs are drawn now. And with the size of the land, I was just curious why it wasn't looked at to actually have more of an internal, longer path with like a gate. You know what I mean? Like I've been in other municipalities where they'll have a gate, and when you go in, there's a huge road that people can line up on, and they're nowhere near the main road where the traffic is. So these are just kind of the things that I was thinking. He brought it up in the questions, and then I'm hearing that the studies were done in 2016, and that throws me off because we're, 6 years ahead of that. So.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Ferragini. Director McCullough, comments?
Yes, thank you. I'll start, and please excuse me if I missed some of your comments, and I'm happy to readdress them. There was a lot in there. We will, as I said, be doing a written response, which we will certainly copy the township on. The site that we're working with is limited with the amount of space that's available to us. Number one, the increased on-site queuing will be good for about 10 vehicles. But that's not the only increase. It's the flow of the traffic that's also going to reduce the lineups, because instead of everyone having to go across the scale, just those that are actually having to pay for items. So free recycling drop off, household hazardous waste, leaf and yard, they will no longer have to queue up. They'll be able to go into the first area, if you want to put it this way, the existing area of the site, while we generate all the rest of the paid items that go through to the far side. If you follow me. So there's two ways that we're actually looking at it: the increased on-site queuing, as well as the layout and the processing that we're going to be doing there. It would be difficult to be able to take a road in through and further to be able to do that. We certainly did look at it. It would create some safety conflicts between where the trucks we have to load and the public themselves. We did see our worst lineups ever last year during COVID. Even though this year's been busier, we haven't seen as bad a lineups this year. The reason for that is most of last year, we were actually open only 5 days. We're back to our regular 6 days. The reason for the closing was to keep our staff separated and working in groups that weren't introducing other staff. And we needed much extra staff to deal at the same time. So excuse me if I missed something. I'm certainly happy to readdress it.
Well, no, that did help with the traffic flow part, and I'm really hoping that it does work out the way that you're envisioning, because even in the presentation, it was more of a, we'll see how it goes, and if we still need to do something, then we'll look at that in the future. And I'm thinking, since you guys are doing such a project now, it'd be better to just address it all together in one shot. But my other concern was the traffic studies themselves. I mean, we're given dates of 2016, and I'm wondering why this stuff wasn't updated further. Even the audible part of the acoustics part of it was been updated 2019. I don't know exactly what an update consists of, because I would think that with such a change, it'd have to be actually fully redone with the amount of traffic that we're getting now in the population. So I'm just curious as to why we're coming forward now to say, hey, we're going to do these upgrades based on 2016 numbers.
Who wants to tackle that? Mr. Winia?
Certainly, I think part of the explanation for that is that the original report laid out various estimations for traffic increases, looked at how to improve circulation on the site, looked at how to improve safety on the site, but did state that the real effect of that won't be measurable until those changes are made. And we're not talking about establishing a new site here. There is a site. We're talking about how we can make it better. So it's a little bit different than when you're talking about an entirely new site. This is a site that currently exists. It currently operates, will continue to operate, but the proposed changes are to improve those operations. So that's why there's a recommendation for a delay to see how those effects improve traffic flows and then determine whether or not additional road upgrades would be appropriate. So that's the reason. There's two things going on. One is it's an existing site. We're trying to make things better. And the other one is we need some real data in terms of how that traffic flow will be impacted by the two things. One is the free operations, which will circulate that traffic much more smoothly, that part of the traffic. And the other one is even the improved circulation of the paying traffic through the site should speed up the traffic flow and should limit the queuing. And then with on-site queuing, that should further limit any on the road queuing. So before they go to the extent of looking at even further improvements off of the site, they really need some real world data to see what happens with those changes. And again, this is all in the context of this is an existing site. We're trying to improve it as opposed to this is a new site. And I don't know if Rob wishes to add anything to that.
Just one thing, if I could, Your Worship. It struck me in listening to that answer. I maybe had not addressed Councillor Ferragini's one question about the left into the site causing some problems when there is a queue on that side. I think a lot of that problem had to do with the location of the current entrance is right after a significant curve on the road if you're approaching from the west to the east, and that causes that problem where people want to make that left in, but they only just finish that curve before even seeing that line and try to make that left in. Where we're moving it further east along the road, it's further along the straightaway, which makes the turning movements coming in and out of the site more safe, but it also allows the person that wants to come into the site to see the queue on the other side potentially before they were to try to make that left in and jump the queue, if you would.
Okay, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Leduc.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. McCullough, for your explanation, because I actually had some of the same questions that Councillor Virginia had with the queuing section, because when I listened to the presentation by Michael, it kind of, we moved the entrance 195 meters, but we moved the scales only 135 meters, and I thought we lost a net loss there of queuing. But I like the site layout, the way you've designed it right now. I think that I'm hoping that does work because of the free drop off. I hope that moves traffic a little bit further. So I still see that you have the bins on the the recycling bins that you have on our site. They're on the southern portion of the site. So when we come in on the northern side, you'll still have to cross the driveway to put your recycling in there. Is that am I looking at that kind of correctly? And that's the first question. And you've got the mattress drop off in the free zone, Mr. McCullough. So will you have a cash thing there? Because mattresses you pay, I think, a flat fee to drop them off. If I think of it, I did that a while ago, and I think I paid. So,
Yeah.
just a couple quick questions.
Yeah, through you, your worship, if I could. First on the mattresses, that's the internal storage for the mattresses. You're right, mattresses are paid, and they will actually have to go over the scale, pay for them, and they will probably drop them off past the scale. We then put them together, ban them for shipment, and that's the location you saw on the map to the right is for the dry storage area prior to shipping. It wouldn't be residents dropping off the mattresses there. And I'm sorry I missed your first question, or it's left me already.
The recycle bins on the south side. So we have to still cross the traffic, right? Coming in out of the site to put your recycling.
Well, you will. The whole free recycling area is in there, and so it will be just like the HHW. It will be in that area. We are looking at alternative locations that may allow residents to drop it off on the way out. It just depends where we can get the power to it because it's all done by compaction as well. So there's a couple thoughts on where to do it there.
Okay, it looked like it showed it on the berm side there. You've got your cardboard and recycling bin. So
right where we already have the power. I think it might work better in the other area. Both our locations are being considered.
Okay, thank you. No, I do like the new layout. I know it's an existing site. We do the best we can. I hope the freehold will help us, but I'm almost thinking in the future you're going to do the option 3 here, I think, and you're going to end up probably doing option 2 with the signage and stuff like that later on, because I think that we're going to still, with growth, we're going to see more people there. One further question is, you talked about the left end. So now that we went to the east gates, Mr. McCullough, will you have a left turning lane there for people that can come in from the left, so traveling from the west to east? Will you have a left turning lane on that gate?
Through you, your worship, that is contemplated as a possibility in the future of having a left turn lane. I think we need to build the site first and operate it for a while to see if that's required. I can imagine a scenario where the left turning lane would cause a problem. If we do continue to have a queue, then people would be miscued trying to turn left in and beat the queue there. So I think we need to walk a little bit before we run with the new design to determine what's going to work best. So that is a future consideration.
All right, thanks.
Okay, are there any further questions from members of council? Councillor Scott?
I agree that I think this is cleaning up the site. I wanted to ask further to Councillor Lamb's comments at the beginning. I'm a little worried about what happens next in terms of the forest and marshland. So I was wondering if there's been any consideration given to adding the wooded area into Simcoe County Forest. There's existing tracks nearby, and certainly I think we'd want to preserve this wooded area, and it would add to the county's forest lands.
Director McCullough?
Yes, thank you. Through you, your worship, we have considered in past, we've got a number of landfill sites close to and right around county forests, and actually we've cleaned up some old landfill sites and turned them into county forests. So that is something that we're working very closely with the forestry to determine if that makes sense. But at this point, they're being managed as if they are county forest. I think there is going to be a small cedar harvest that's going to happen on that location in the next few years. And it is a site that the county forester has his staff look in on a yearly basis to determine what needs to happen next. Managed as a county forest without even being called it at this point.
Right, thank you. I would encourage you to do both at once then and actually put it into county forest. I think that's a nice compensatory gesture and shows that we're taking the environmental impact seriously, and it sounds like we'd even just be formalizing the status quo anyway. So it would be a good idea, and more than just a PR move, it would be a nice thing to solidify.
Okay. Thank you for your input.
Okay, Councillor Contois and then Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I was a little concerned about the flow, but after your explanation, it clarified a bunch of things for me. As far as the wetlands and the protection of the animals, I hope that the county steps up and builds little habitats for them, and do their best to maintain their life. Now, one observation I have here is I noticed you had like your office and hazardous waste and electronics and mattresses. How concerned are you with the hazardous waste next to your office?
Okay, Mr. McCullough?
Thank you. Through you, your worship, we are not worried about that at all. That's basically how it happens at most of our other sites, having the staff right there. Our staff are very good at separating materials, overseeing the site, and very often will work from that office / lunchroom space and monitor the rest of the site, and come out when people show up to drop material off at the HHW. So that is the normal action that we have at most of our sites that have HHW already.
Okay, Councillor Lamb and then Councillor Orr.
Yeah, just to clarify, I wasn't proposing making it part of the official county forest, because it is over landfill site, and it is doesn't have people and their pets and everything else running through it like they do in many forests, and we have a problem with what people leave behind. I would rather see that 70 odd acres set aside to mitigate its past itself, and to create habitat that doesn't have to bear the brunt of human intrusion. So if you do make it a county forest, I would hope it would be special, so that it's not part of where people go cycling, skiing, and walking their pets and such like that. I believe it should be left to the indigenous wildlife. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Orr.
I just clarification. Your free area, you're going to come to first, I take it. You'll be able to go in and drop the free areas off. And if a lot of times most people have free and project to pay, will they, when they come out of the free, are they going to have to merge into the line again? Am I looking at it wrong? It just looks like you're now when you're free, I mean, you go through the line when you come back over the scale, then you go back around and drop your free off and go out. So are you going to have to merge back into the line, or am I looking at it wrong? Just a quick question.
Mr. McCullough.
Yes, through you, your worship, there's really 2 or 3 different ways that people can do it. They could, if people are bringing both free and paid items, they could do as they're doing now and go for, never have to get out of line, and line up wherever the line is, go right in over the scale, deal with their paid items first. On the way out, stop on the left and enter and dispose of the free things, and then continue on their way out. We imagine that most of the time, even when there is lineups, the lineups aren't all day long. They are, they center around sort of 10 till 1 o'clock at some of the worst times, certainly on Saturdays. But for most of the part, if there's 2 or 3 people in line, they can do just about any way they wish. I can imagine there would be a problem where people in a long lineup wouldn't want to merge and let people back in once they drop the free material. So our recommendation at that point is don't put your free stuff off till last and then leave.
Okay, thank you. So are there any other questions or comments from members of council? We've had lots of good discussion. So with that, I'll read further action. So Council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for a further recommendation report at a later date. So I do have a recommendation that report DES 2021-53 entitled Public Information Meeting, Application for Zoning Bylaw and Official Plan Amendment, the Corporation of the County of Simcoe for 2960 line 12, file number D14-2104 and D09-2101 be received, and the comments received in writing and are made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planner consider the matters raised and address same in its recommendation report. So a mover and a seconder for this. The Deputy Mayor Leduc, Councillor Orr. Any further comments? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? And it is carried. So with that, thank you for the presentation, and yes, we'll look forward to the staff report coming back at a further meeting. So with that, we'll move on to item 4.4, the next public information meeting is the application for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision for vacant land condominium. The owner is 2000462 Ontario Limited, Y Santarelli and A Santarelli. So the applicant is Angelo Santarelli. The agent is Thornstone Consulting, care of Dan Stone, location 5648 Highway 9, 5618 Highway 9, and 5584 Highway 9, file number OPA D09-2104, zoning plan amendment D14-2101, condo D12-2101. So our planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report, and please note the application being presented by staff represents the applicant's development proposal. Presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will reflect and consider the public comments made during the public meeting and written submissions. So I'll now turn it over to our planner, Thomas Dissette. So Thomas.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and everyone watching at home this evening. My name is Thomas Dissette, and tonight I will be presenting on file number D09-2104, D21-2101, D14-2101 for the properties municipally known as 5648 Highway 9, 5618 Highway 9, and 5584 Highway 9. Tonight I will be discussing the purpose of the public meeting, introduce the application, and provide overview of the subject property, summarize comments received, and provide next steps. If anyone does wish to receive further updates on this application, to send an email to myself at tdysart@townofbwg.com. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the applicant's proposal to council and members of the public and invite questions and seek input. Once an application has been received under the Planning Act and deemed complete, the municipality is obligated to hold a public meeting. As a reminder, staff are introducing the applicant's proposal and have not yet completed a detailed analysis of the application. Council will not be making any decisions this evening. Anyone wishing to receive further updates on the application can do so by emailing myself. I did want to acknowledge that related development applications have been submitted to the town of New Tecumseth on adjoining properties under file DEV 402 and NTCD 2101. For the purpose of tonight's meeting, we will only be discussing the properties in Bradford, which are outlined in red on the map. An application for official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of vacant condominium has been submitted by Thornstone Consulting Services on behalf of the property owners. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the development of a multi-block rural industrial commercial plan of subdivision for lands located along Highway 9. Notice of tonight's meeting was given in accordance with regulations under the Planning Act. The applications for zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of vacant condominium were submitted to the town in December 2020, with notice of complete application being provided in accordance with the Planning Act. Subsequently, applications for official plan amendment were submitted to the town in October, with notice of complete application and notice of public information meeting going to the paper on October 28th, 2021. The subject lands are located on the north side of Highway 9, east of County Road 27. The properties are surrounded primarily by agricultural, residential, and industrial commercial uses with a watercourse traversing the property. The site currently features residential and non-residential uses related to Trisan's construction operations. In the town's 2002 official plan, the lands are located outside the Bradford urban area, Bondhead settlement area, and the Highway 400 employment lands and are designated agricultural. In the town's 2001 official plan, the lands remain outside the Bradford urban area and are designated rural south of the watercourse and agricultural north of the watercourse. Development of this application is only proposed in the rural designated portions of the property, which, as I said, is south of the watercourse. Zoning bylaw 2010-050 as amended zones the properties as agricultural A, environmental protection, EP, and agricultural exception A*17. In the agricultural zone, permitted uses include agricultural uses, detached dwellings, farm-related tourism establishments, and greenhouses. The agricultural exception zones permits those uses in the agricultural zone, as well as a variety of industrial uses, including but not limited to assembly plant, concrete batching and mixing plant, contractor's yard, fuel storage, and distribution depot, open stores for goods and materials, as well as other uses. This is the conceptual site plan as submitted by the applicant. The application does traverse municipal boundaries, fronts onto an MTO controlled road with primary access into the subdivision north of Showa Court, which is just on the right-hand side of the screen. The subdivision is proposed to be a private development on private services, with each block being subject to future site plan applications. In order to enable the development, the applicant has submitted an application for an official plan amendment. The amendment is proposing a special policy area that would permit a rural employment area, allowing for both rural industrial and highway commercial uses. The applicant is also seeking an amendment to the zoning bylaw, whereas lands would be rezoned as follows. The agricultural exception zone would be rezoned to the rural employment M3 or highway commercial C3 zone. The agricultural A would be rezoned to either the rural employment zone or the open space zone, and the zoning would only apply to those portions south of the environmental protection area or the watercourse as well. The applicant has also submitted an application for draft plan of vacant condominium, whereas 13 blocks across all properties are being proposed and will be subject to future site plan applications as appropriate. The application and the materials submitted in support of the application were circulated to internal departments and external agencies for review and comment in February 2001 and again in October of this year. To date, staff have received no comments or concerns from Electra, Bell, Enbridge, Hydro One, South Lake Regional Health Center, the Town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury Capital Vision, the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury Clerks Department, as well as the Town of Bradford West Gwillimbury Finance Department. On the initial submission for the zoning bylaw and draft plan of vacant condominium, County of Simcoe noted that a local official plan amendment would be required for the proposed rural employment area to be permitted in the rural designation in the county's official plan. Town staff are currently waiting on updated comments on the proposed official plan amendment. In addition, the region of York is seeking confirmation from the applicant whether a cross-jurisdictional agreement would be required for servicing to be extended from King Township. And the region also noted that King Township will need to verify whether there is adequate capacity in its water system to meet fire flow demands. Lastly, comments received from the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority noted that they would be requiring all identified natural heritage areas and associated vegetative protection zones and hazard areas to be placed in the appropriate environmental protection zone to ensure no risk to public health and safety or to property. We have not received any written comments from members of the public. This concludes the presentation. As a reminder, this meeting is being held under the Planning Act and staff are introducing the applicant's proposal. Staff are continuing with a detailed review of the application and will bring back a recommendation report once a comprehensive review takes place. Following next steps, the agent is here this evening to present on the application as well as answer any questions the council or the public may have. As a reminder, if anyone does wish to receive further notification on this application, to send an email to myself at tdysart@townofbwg.com.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So at this time, I'll ask if the proponent or their representative wants to make a presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. That sounds good.
Great. Again, good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor Leduc, and members of council, staff, and any members of the public that are attending tonight. My name is Dan Stone. I am a registered professional planner with Thorstone Consulting, and I am the project manager and planner for this application. I do have a presentation I'd like to go through, and I know council is aware that my client, Mr. Santorelli, is also here with us tonight should there be any questions. So I will go through the presentation and try not to duplicate the information that's already been provided through Thomas's presentation. But I would like to go through my slide deck. Okay, with that, next slide, please. Again, the applicant, Trisand Construction, is a family-owned and operated business that has been in operation for more than 40 years. Employs more than 180 full-time staff and additional seasonal part-time staff. You can see the photograph on this particular slide shows the building on the New Tecumseh side, which is currently occupied by Trisand as the head office. Just a bit of background on the applicant and the applicant's company. Next slide, please. Just in terms of some context, as Thomas has indicated, the application deals with a variety of properties. There are currently 5 separate ownerships of properties that are controlled by Trisand companies. You can see them outlined here, 2 of which are within the town of New Tecumseh. The 3 that have been the focus of the applications before Bradford here tonight are within the town of Bradford, West Gwillimbury. Council may be aware that we did a public meeting for New Tecumseh Council back on November the 3rd and basically presented the same applications. As Thomas has indicated to you, we have filed applications to amend our official plan and our zoning bylaw together with the vacant land condominium, and we have submitted the same 3 applications to the town of New Tecumseh. Of course, dealing with all of the properties in a contiguous fashion, and I'll go through the concept plan as we move forward on with my presentation. Next slide, please. Again, this gives you the context of the property, and I'm just showing you the existing zoning. Thomas has identified the A*17 zone, which applies to a good portion of my client's properties within Bradford. You'll see the cross-hatching in the New Tecumseh area north of Highway 9, which is highway commercial zoning, which exists on that particular portion of the property. That includes the location of Trisand's current head office building, the photograph you saw earlier. And you'll see a cluster of highway commercial zoning at the corner of 27 and 9, right at the intersection. And of course, to the south, you have the fully serviced employment area within the Township of King, within the region of York. So you can see how the jurisdictions complicate these applications, but to make them interesting at the same time. Next slide, please. This is the vacant land plan of condominium. You'll see Trisand Court at the very bottom, which is an extension of the controlled intersection at Showa Court, and then the east-west road and a series of blocks which are to be developed individually through individual site plan applications. In terms of the common elements, the east-west road is proposed to be designed and built as a common element condominium road. Block 13 would support the stormwater management facility for the proposed development, and it also includes the location of our proposed communal servicing systems. Those, in addition to an emergency access, which you see at block 16, I don't know if you can see my mouse down here, being a single loaded entrance into the property through the controlled intersection at Showa Court, it was considered appropriate to have an emergency access to provide a secondary means for emergency vehicles to get into the property. So that's basically the lands that are subject to the applications before you tonight. And you'll see the additional lands owned by the applicant, which go all the way up to Highway 27 to the north. Next slide, please. The vacant land condominium, again, I spoke to it briefly in terms of the common elements which would be part of the condominium corporation. Again, the individual blocks would be privately held, and each property owner would be a party to the condominium corporation, which would be looking after these common elements that I referred to earlier. I'll go to the next slide just to walk through the urban design concept, which is effectively the same slide that you saw on Thomas's presentation, but I just wanted to point out a couple of things here. Again, I'm showing the existing zoning outlined in blue. So the purpose of this slide is to show that a good portion of the properties which have been assembled already have some level of highway commercial or industrial zoning. And the proposal would seek to expand that to the balance of the lands. You're looking at buildings that are shown schematically here in the urban design concept. The ones with the E symbol are existing buildings, which are already constructed, and the balance of the buildings that I'm showing here on the concept plan shows a vision of what might be in terms of the proposed rural industrial commercial development. Of note to the lands on the Bradford West Gwillimbury side are the two blocks opposite the controlled intersection of Showa Court, which we are proposing for highway commercial purposes, as Thomas has indicated to you in the proposed zoning bylaw. Also pointing out to you the stormwater pond and the STP, which is the the sewage treatment plant facility, which we are identifying up on block 13, which is part of the servicing scheme for the proposal. Next slide, please. So we've talked a little bit about jurisdiction. I think in my over 30 years of planning practice, this is probably one of the most complicated applications I've been involved with from a jurisdictional perspective. We, of course, are dealing with MTO as it relates to Highway 9. We've done the necessary traffic studies that are being reviewed by the province for that aspect of the application. We are proposing to connect to the Schaumburg water supply to the south, solely for the purposes of emergency firefighting water supply, not for the domestic needs of the individual development lots in the proposed development. Domestic water supply would be provided by a series of existing wells, which would be part of the communal water servicing system. However, we again are proposing, and we have had discussions with both the region of York and the township of King on access to the water system in Schaumburg for the purposes of fire protection. This particular area is subject to an agreement with King Township. So King Fire looks after emergency services for this particular area for the obvious reasons that they have a fire hall just south of Highway 9, and it's much more readily accessible to any other fire protection services that would be provided from either Bradford or New Tech. So I think that water supply for firefighting purposes makes sense from a fire protection and emergency services perspective. So again, we're dealing with the region and the township as it relates to that. For the communal domestic water and sanitary system, we are working with the Ministry of Environment, who is the approval authority for the communal servicing system. As Thomas has mentioned, we have amendments to both New Tech's official plan and your official plan under consideration, and the County of Simcoe, of course, is the approval authority for those documents. We're dealing with the Conservation Authority because, as you know, there is a significant environmental feature running east-west through the property, and we're dealing with floodplain and Lake Simcoe Protection Plan requirements for that feature. And of course, we're dealing with the two adjacent municipalities, each with their own different development standards for planning and engineering. But I'm happy to say that I did want council to be aware that we do have a very positive level of cooperation between the two municipalities as we work through these applications, and the county is also providing some assistance at the county level. Next slide, please. In terms of the land use planning rationale, the proposal does allow for the consolidation of existing Tri-San business operations and allows for their expansion as well. The development will provide for additional opportunities for appropriate rural highway and commercial uses, as well as rural employment uses. From a planning perspective and land use compatibility, I think the site is a good site in terms of being relatively removed from any sensitive adjacent land uses that could be sensitive, such as residential development. And of course, we're opposite the fully serviced lands within King Township and adjacent to the highway commercial node at Highway 27 and Highway 9. So I believe that the proposal is compatible from a land use perspective. Next slide, please. I should point out for council's information that what you're looking at on this slide is the host of individual studies and reports that were submitted as part of the applications. We did a pre-consultation meeting with your municipality back in 2019, and we did a similar meeting with New Tecumseh. The purpose of those meetings, as council is aware, is for the municipalities to identify the information requirements that are needed to support the development applications. So these are the studies and reports that have been prepared and submitted with the applications and are currently being reviewed by the various different agencies and your technical staff. Next slide, please. The vacant land condominium, I'll speak to it again. I think most of the time we're used to condominium applications in a high-rise residential sense, where the condominium corporation is responsible for certain things. In this particular case, as we've mentioned, the individual blocks would be held privately, but the blocks would be developed through individual site plan applications. And what I'm pointing out here is the common elements for the condominium corporation would be the communal water and sanitary system, the east-west road itself, which will contain that infrastructure, the operation and maintenance of the communal sewage and water treatment facilities, the central stormwater management facilities, and of course the domestic water supply. Those would all be within the mandate of the condominium corporation. Next slide, please. In terms of the communal sewage system, I just provided this slide to give council an understanding of what it is we're talking about. It's basically a system that would be designed in accordance with ministry guidelines and requirements of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan in terms of effluent criteria. But basically, the sewage is collected from the individual development parcels and it is collected at this facility or a facility that might look like this, and treatment is undertaken and then discharged into the receiving stream, which is the tributary of the Schomburg River. The slide here is taken from a communal system that was designed by the same consulting team that we have on this particular project, and this services the residential development around Emerald Hills Golf Course in Stouffville. And I'm just pointing out some of the architectural design of the plant itself. That's the building you see at the top right corner. So this is just an example. I just wanted to give council and the public an understanding of what we're talking about when we're talking about a communal sewage treatment facility. Next slide, please. There was a short-term economic development opportunity, and I know that this does not necessarily pertain to the lands within Bradford, West Gwillimbury, but this is the same presentation that we took to New Tecumseh Council. My client does have some arrangements with a specific employer who would like to move onto this project, and specifically the block at the very west end of the property, which again is entirely within New Tecumseh. And this is a potential short-term opportunity where we're looking at advancing pre-consultation and site plan applications with New Tecumseh to see if we can get this one started sometime early next year, if possible. We are showing potentially some interim temporary septic systems in advance of the communal system, as I don't think it'll be ready to be connected at the time of this particular industry wanting to locate. But I just wanted to bring this to this council's attention in terms of a potential economic development opportunity for a portion of the property. Next slide, please. So it's some community planning and economic development benefits. One of the large benefits that we anticipate with this project is vastly improved traffic safety along Highway 9. You'll note that we have an east-west road, which will be directing most of the traffic, or all of the traffic, quite frankly, to the controlled intersection with Showa Court, and eliminating the individual driveway entrances that are currently in place for the 5 individual properties. And I believe that is something that would be welcoming an improvement by MTO in terms of traffic safety on Highway 9. We also see this application as an opportunity to clearly establish the environmental features on the site and establish development limits. We have already prepared some level of restoration plans for the valley system to the north of the development site that are being reviewed by the Conservation Authority. So there's an environmental benefit there to increase the function of the environmental feature to the north. And of course, this particular application does create potential for job creation and increase municipalities in terms of development charges and tax assessment for both municipalities. The one thing I didn't indicate on this slide, which is another element I'd like to submit for council's consideration, is I'm sure you're aware of the current MCR process with the County of Simcoe, looking at growth out to 2051. And the work that Hempson is doing with the land needs assessment. And this work is rather recent, within the last couple of months, but I did want to point out that Hempson's numbers through the county MCR are predicting that there will be a shortfall of employment lands both in Bradford and in New Tecumseh going out to the year 2051. So in the context of that particular finding, in terms of the work that Hempson has done for the MCR, this particular application provides an opportunity to perhaps address some of those employment needs going forward. Next slide. So next steps, we're here tonight to listen to the concerns of the public and the concerns and questions that may come from members of council. We would like to take the opportunity to review and respond to these comments, as well as the agency comments. Continue to coordinate with your staff and the neighboring municipality, and have these applications back in front of you as soon as possible for a recommendation report from staff and hopefully approvals moving forward. I believe that is my last slide, Your Worship, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, Mr. Santorelli is on the line as well, should there be any questions that I can't handle.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. And Mr. Santorelli, do you want to make any comment at this time, or when questions come, that maybe a brief comment from you at this time?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council, for having us on. I've been in there since 2005 in the township. And I just want to say we hope that we can improve our stance in the township as well. We have good opportunity here to for myself is to have good opportunity to create more employment areas, and also to hopefully improve our ability for our employees by having better places to build and to grow. And that's one thing that's really important to me. And the other thing is we have about 80 or 90 people now that live in Bradford that work for us. We like to try and keep our employees local, and some from New Tech, and most of the people from Bradford. And we're just hoping that through this development, we'll be able to, like I said, we'll be able to improve some of the buildings we have and do some better site work as well within this planning that we're trying to do. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Santorelli, and yes, thanks for mentioning the number of employees that live in our municipality. That's always important that they're able to work close to where they live. So with that, I'll ask our Deputy Clerk if we have had any members of the public that have registered to make any comments. So Tara?
No, Your Worship, we have not received any requests from the public to speak on this application.
Okay, with that, I'll turn it over to members of council to ask questions or comment. And I think maybe what I'll do, I'll get 2 or 3 members of council at a time to ask questions, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Stone to answer it. And I think it's better time management doing it that way. So, Deputy Mayor, do you want to start off?
Your Worship, I'm not sure if I have any questions, but I just wanted to congratulate them on a well done presentation. I mean, it is a difficult one when you really look at it. It was interesting to watch the presentation and see all of the agencies you have to go through: Bradford, Newtek, King, York, Lake Simcoe. I mean, it is a complicated one, but when I looked at it, I did like the fact that it does clean that area up. It makes it a nice condominium, commercial industrial site. I think it's a good. It's a good one. I think Mr. Stone picked up on it that our MCR at this point in time says that we could be short some industrial lands, and this certainly could play into that very well for us in the MCR. So I think you did a great job with the entrance at Showa. I like that, the single entrance. It does clean up several driveways in that area. So an interesting application, to tell you the truth. I haven't been involved in something like this yet, so very interesting to see how this processes forward. But I do like what we're seeing right now. I kind of think it's interesting. I did like your treatment plant where you made it look part of the community. So that looked pretty impressive in my sense. And what we try to do with ours, if you can see some of ours, you might have mimicked some of the things we do in our community for our treatment plant, our pumping station. So anyways, I'm sorry I don't have a question. I just thought it was a great application. I thought it was a very complicated one, and I commend Dan and Mr. Santoro for a great job of putting this together for us. So it was pretty clear and concise to me. So thank you very much for giving us that information.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll go to Councillor Dykey now.
Well, I have similar comments as Deputy Mayor. I think it's very challenging when you work with different municipalities to pull it together. Dan Stone, I think, has done a great presentation and a great job to coordinate it. But on the positive note, I think that location is perfect on Highway 9 to provide opportunities for those condominium opportunities for that. And there's a demand, as Dan Stone mentioned it, and I'm glad to see that an opportunity like this to take place on a private development and a condominium building to be built. My one question is the sewage treatment plant. Does obviously the corporation of the condominium corporation maintains it, and I just wanted to know how that's dealt with into a condominium agreement. Like would the town have any liability down the road for the maintenance if it's not maintained properly or whatever? I just want to know what assurances the town gets that we're not going to be at some future date wouldn't have any liability of maintenance or anything. You know, I just curious how that's dealt with. But overall, I'm all for the project. I think it's a great opportunity, just assessment for additional assessment. It's glad to see some industrial versus always seeing residential subdivision. So I'm glad to see some more industrial condominiums come to our municipality and on the outskirts of our town, and it's a great location. But if Dan, you could answer my question on the maintenance of that plant.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Dykey. Maybe my question, and then I'll get Dan to answer, was the water agreement with is it the region of York? Would that be the town that would have to make the agreement, or is it the condominium corporation? So I wonder, Dan, if you want to answer Councillor Dykey's as far as the wastewater, and then about the fire protection water, how that will, who's responsible for that?
Okay, thank you for the question. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Dykey's question on the sewage treatment. It'll typically be required through the ministry that the sewage treatment facilities be subject to an individual responsibility agreement. That's what it's referred to, and it'll be executed between the province who issues the C of A, or the certificate of approvals for the technology, and the condominium corporation. And it sets out a whole series of obligations for the perpetual maintenance and agreements. And there's securities that are held to ensure the operations over time. And the condo corporation obviously would be responsible financially to make sure that that is kept in good order. There's maintenance obligations, there's reporting obligations. So in my experience, the one that I had some involvement in was in King Township when I was with the municipality. The responsibility agreement for the Club Link Golf Course development of 80 condominium units around the golf course. So the condominium corporation did a responsibility agreement and was responsible for providing monitoring and reports to the province on a regular basis, and there's securities in place in the case of default, where the condominium corporation is on the hook for making sure that things are operated in a proper manner. So there is no potential fallout or obligation on the municipality in that regard. It's between the condo corporation and the province through the responsibility agreement. So I hope that answers your question. In terms of the water supply for firefighting, we got to get under the road. That means we're dealing with MTO. We got to deal with the region because they supply region of York, that is, because they provide the water supply and treatment and storage, and then the local distribution is done by the municipality of King Township. So I'm not too sure how this is going to be done, save and except that we've had discussions with staff at the region and the Township of King. I haven't seen any formal comments yet, but it'll be a complicated type of arrangement to make it happen. But there's a general agreement that it's the proper and common sense way to do this type of thing. The only other experience I've had is within the region of York across municipal boundaries, and I'm sure CAO McKnight might have some experience with that type of experience within the region of York as well. So maybe he has some comments on that, but we're in early stages right now, but we do have a level of comfort from both the regional municipality of York and the Township of King that we can make this thing happen. King's only concern, quite frankly, is that connecting this project to the municipal water system for firefighting water supply cannot be done at the expense of Schaumburg's planned population and growth. And I think our engineering reports that we've produced are demonstrating that to the satisfaction of the municipality. They're reviewing that, but that is their only concern.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So that, yes, and you know, in the county of Simcoe, it's municipalities that look after. So I know Innisfil and Barrie have intermunicipal agreements. We have an intermunicipal agreement for a large part of our water supply with Innisfil and that. So it certainly is done. So hopefully that it can be worked out and to the satisfaction of everybody. So other questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor?
I just want to sit here, and I apologize. I don't want to tie up anybody's time, but would there be any talks with King to maybe you're already going on the road and driving a water line? Would there be any talks to take your treatment plant back to the King side? Have you had that discussion, or have you had that? I'm looking at Angelo to see if he's had that discussion at all with anybody, because I'm just wondering if that's something that could be done in the future. I'm not sure. And you're going on the road now. I've always said putting an extra pipe in doesn't cost as much when you're there, but just a thought, just a question to see if anybody's ever had that discussion.
Mr. Santarelli?
The thought has crossed my mind a number of times, and I think it's a big discussion just to get the water protection. For some reason, municipalities like to protect their border. And they like to protect their borders, and they like to protect their water, and they like to protect their sewage plant. So I built my own sewage plant. And so I'm hoping also I'm getting this water for fire protection because it makes sense. But I agree with you. I can always throw an extra pipe. So in 20 or 35 years, they might decide to give us something, who knows? But yeah, I don't I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, sorry.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll read the further actions that council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for a further recommendation report at a later date. So the recommendation is that report DES 2021-52 entitled Public Information Meeting Application for Official Plan Amendment, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, and Draft Plan of Subdivision for Vacant Land Condominium 5648, 5618, 5584 Highway 9 be received, and that the comments made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised at the public meeting and address same in its recommendation report. And the council provide any comments or directions to staff regarding application number DEV 402 and NTCD 2101 to the town of New Tecumseh through separate resolution. So a mover and a seconder for this, that Councillor Contois, Councillor Lamb. Any further comments or questions? I'm just reading the recommendation, and we don't want to make a comment to the town of New Tecumseh at this time, I presume, and I'll just ask Thomas that if there's anything comes up in the future, but we're happy with this recommendation as it is, and that at this time there's no comment or direction to the town of New Tecumseh. Is that right?
Correct, Mr. Mayor. We were looking for direction to the effect of submitting comments to New Tecumseh on it would be premature for New Tecumseh to issue a decision on the application prior to Bradford issuing their decision. So the comment to New Tecumseh would be to not issue a decision until Bradford has, based on the fact that access is required from Bradford lands into New Tecumseh. So that was the one comment we had on that matter.
Okay, so with that, I'll call for the vote on the recommendation that I read. So all those in favor? Any opposed? And it is carried. So I'll just read. Yes, thank you, Mr. Santarelli and Dan. Thanks for your presentation. So the follow-up, it is recommended that all comments or questions on planning applications be submitted in writing to planninginfo@town@bwg.com. Written submissions are not required at a public meeting, but can be made at a later date and will be accepted up to the date the council makes a decision on the matter. Written submissions on planning matters will not be read at the council meeting, but will be forwarded to planning staff for consideration and response. Council will be apprised of all public comments received prior to making a decision on the applicant. If you wish to receive information on a specific planning application to be notified at an upcoming meeting related to a planning matter, please email planninginfo@town@bwg.com. So with that, to adjourn the public meeting, recommendation is that the public meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:52. Mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Dykey, Councillor Lamb, all in favor? It is carried. Confirm proceedings, recommendation that bylaw 2021-76, bylaw to confirm proceedings of the special council meeting dated November 23rd, 2021 be enacted. Mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Ferragini, Councillor Scott, all in favor? It is carried. And adjournment, recommendation that the meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:52 p.m. I'll need a mover and a seconder for this as well. Who haven't I gotten? Councillor Orr, Councillor Dykey, all in favor?